Welcome back to War Thunder and welcome aboard the CIS-43, the recent addition to the Soviet AAA line. And the Soviet AAA line is the major topic of today's video. Now in the background footage you can see one of the most memorable games at mid-tier that I have played recently, because it never stopped. The initial part fell to the CIS-43, and I think many issues that I have with this kind of vehicle are noticeable throughout the entirety of the Russian AAA vehicle line. And especially when we compare the low to mid to even certain of the high tier AAAs of the Germans, you can see that the Germans have a massive advantage in both anti-tank and also anti-aircraft capabilities, just when looking at the AAA line. You always have numerous aspects on a vehicle, and it is the mobility, the maneuverability, the survivability, the protection, the firepower, the rate of fire, the reload, how much ammunition you have, ammunition selection, and many of those aspects just are not very great throughout the Russian AAA line. First of all, let's begin with the tier 1s. The 4M gas AAA and the Disk gas AAA. Both at 1.0. They are funny to look at, and at low tiers you don't expect anything. They are equipped with machine guns, and they're just not really that great. Yes, you can shoot down aircraft, but not very effectively, and you have, at least on the Disk gas AAA, a limited ammunition supply, and that's not so great. In this respect, the 4M gas AAA has one of the weirdest kind of firing mechanisms, because those Maxim machine guns in the caliber of 7.62 are water cooled, and they just don't stop firing, and you will go through your 4,000 rounds of ammunition relatively reliable. And when we compare this to the German ones, they just don't cut it. The German ones outclass them in pure damage output and to a certain degree also mobility, because the Germans are mounted on actual tanks, and they also have cannons that can take down enemy planes very effectively indeed. Then we come at 2.3 to the 72K gas MMM, and for a very long time this was the first AAA that the Russians had. And a 25mm cannon actually is not that bad, but again, like the other two previous AAA vehicles, it's on a truck, so maneuvering is not that easy in comparison to a tank. And we have those wooden side planks, I guess you call them, and they are highly annoying, especially when we also talk about that CIS-43 in a moment. But before that, we have to talk about the 94km CIS-12 at battle rating 3.3 with two 25mm 72K cannons. It has overall more ammunition, but individually for each gun less. Let's talk a little bit about this 25mm armament. I think it's good. Against aircraft, it's really good. 13 grams of TNT explosion mass, that's dealing quite nicely with aircraft, if we don't have a patch or a patch version that gives aircraft an unheard of survivability. It does have the rate of fire and might be, in pure anti-aircraft purposes, the best mid to low tier AAA that the Russians have access to. The AP belt, 46mm of penetration, yeah, it really can't compete with the Germans ones, which get about 60 to 65 with their HWAP or APHE shells. And yes, the Germans actually get at mid-tier APHE shells. First at battle rating 3.0 in the Sonderkraftfahrzeug 6-2 with its 37mm Flak 36, which just doesn't stop firing. The ammunition count seems to be equal, but it's a much bigger gun, so keep this in mind. I probably never had a problem with the ammunition supply. And just let's talk about this 37mm German APHE shell. Okay, it has 65mm of penetration initially, 52 at 540 still at 1,000 meters. And here comes the nice thing: 13 grams of explosive mass. Okay, that's around about what you get on the HE shell of the 25mm shell, and the TNT equivalent of the PE and PETN explosive type equals 22.1 grams. 22.1 grams. Let me just compare this to the APHE shell of the Panzer IV Ausführung F2. You know, the first one with the long 75mm. On the Panzergranate 39 you have a TNT equivalent of 28.9 grams. So in the APHE shell from a AAA gun in the caliber of 37mm, you have almost as much TNT equivalent in the high explosive filling as on a dedicated 75mm anti-tank armor-piercing high explosive shell. That's amazing. And we have to make a quick step upwards. Let's talk about the ZSU 57 too, okay? Because that one has in its APHE belt also 22.1 grams. So in the German 37mm APHE belt, you have as much TNT equivalent as the Russians on the 57mm APHE shells. We will come to this back in a moment. So the German 37 is really strong for its tier, its battle rating, and its overall handling. Now, the 94 KM CIS 12, let's come back to this, is the best anti-tank, the best anti-aircraft vehicle that the Russians have up until to battle rating 8.0. Because it has the rate of fire and the decent reload, and to a certain degree also a nice ammunition supply. The 25mm shells have overall a nice damage output, and the gun handling overall is nice. The CIS 43 on the other hand is outstandingly bad, frustrating, and just suffers greatly from certain recent changes. I'm obviously talking about the hull brake mechanic, which was a good change. I have to point this out. But for this vehicle, that meant a really great nerf. I got killed multiple times by just losing 2 crew members because I was hit by a rather high caliber shell. One incident in particular with a 75mm HE shell from a Panzer IV made me think. It hit the front section of the vehicle and killed the driver and the commander, but not the loader and the gunner. So technically I was still operational, but the hull brake mechanic kicked in a while, and I was registered as being dead. So the CIS 43, let's talk about this vehicle for a moment. 28.2 degrees of turret rotation speed is not really bad, but not outstandingly good. Minus 5 degree of gun depression is not that bad, especially you are mounted on a half track, which looks funny by the way, and you actually can shoot over the front of the vehicle, which all other truck mounted guns really can't, except for the German 88mm half track, but that has reduced gun depression over the front, so keep that in mind. Then the fire rate is 160 rounds per minute. That is not too high. It's still a 37mm 61K cannon, which has a nice ability to penetrate up to 60mm of armor with its APT round, but it's just a solid shot, not an armor-piercing high explosive shell. So this is kind of the same characteristic that you have on certain American AAAs, namely the M15 with its 13 7mm armament, the M19 and the M42 Duster, also the Japanese version of it, with its 40mm Bofors cannons, together with the British Crusader AA Mark I, which I thought for a long time is the worst vehicle in the game. It's not that terribly bad, but it's not good either. They have around about 76mm of penetration, which is better, but in the overwhelming majority of cases at their respective battle rating, it's not good enough. And again, still solid shots. Back to the Germans, we can see that at 3.7 and 4.7 we get two very outstandingly awesome vehicles. The Wirbelwind with 4 20mm and the Ostwind with a rapid firing, practically non-existing reload issue, having 37mm cannon, and both are mounted on the Panzer IV chassis, so they do not suffer from the hull break. They also have a decent survivability because they still have a lot of crew members. They are open top, yes, but they are not completely open and very easy to shoot with machine guns, such as all those half tracks. All right, so they have a decent amount of protection. They have really high rate of fire and a good ammunition supply and a good ammunition selection. Both have really great anti-tank purposes, anti-tank belts, and the Panzergranate 40 is mixed up with the Panzergranate on the Wirbelwind as the top end belt. 64mm of penetration is the best that you can get out of your HRAP round, and the Panzergranate has 46mm of penetration, but that is not the top belt, but it has also better damaging effect. It acts like a mini APHE shells, at least a few fragments shoot around on the inside of the tank. It's actually pretty nice to look at. Then let's move to the Ostwind, which has practically the same belts as the Sonderkraftfahrzeug 6-2, but it has a higher rate of fire and more protection and more ammunition, and is really great. A lot of people use this as a dedicated tank hunter or tank destroyer. Then let's go back to the Russians, and 4.0 is the battle rating of the ZIS-43. Now, again, the 37mm 61 cannon has okayish gun handling, but the elevation speed is not the highest, survivability is low, and you don't have too much ammunition, just 256 rounds, which is just around about a quarter of what you get on the German vehicle with the 37mm cannon. Furthermore, 90 horsepower for an 8.8 ton tank on a half track. That's just slow. Then the maneuverability overall is not the greatest. The reverse gear is not very fast. It's not Panther bad reverse gear, but it's really not fast. Especially when stock, this is just a vehicle that doesn't really move. And then the constant wobbling around when you just drive in one line, in one direction. It's not really great. I don't like it. Also restricted top speed of just 35. It was kind of a lot of work to really upgrade this. Then let's move on. I'm sorry about this. To the ZSU 37. Very well-known vehicle at 4.7 that you also see at higher tiers. Same cannon as the ZIS-43, but kind of not the very same vehicle. It's a bit more stable, offers a bit more protection, but also not very good survivability overall. It has actually less kind of ammunition for the same gun, and you just don't have the rate of fire, the shell density, and so on to put down effectively aircraft, which is the major issue of this entire line. And then I have to say, you see that ZSU 37 at higher tiers a lot, played very aggressively, because there is a 3.0 battle rating gap to the ZSU 57-2. And that ZSU 57-2 is not that great against aircraft, because again it doesn't have the rate of fire, but when you hit, it's more or less a guaranteed one shot when you shoot with HE, because those are the biggest anti-aircraft guns in the game currently. Technically, yes, there is the German 88mm half track, but it does really underperform in terms of anti-aircraft purposes. Yes, we don't have the airburst shell, but we also don't need it because it's an outstanding tank hunter or tank destroyer. Now, why do I say this? Well, I want to bring this into perspective. Still, this is kind of the counterpart to the Ostwind, but it doesn't come even close. In all events where you had Russian vehicles and German vehicles fighting against each other, the AAA battle was always won by the German side, except if the German really screwed up. But the Germans just have the advantage. Ammunition selection, reload, protection, everything. Everything's there. But then we come to the outstanding one, that ZSU 57-2, which I just mentioned. And that also has with its stock round the highest penetration armor-piercing round. And it's actually an APHE shell. With the stock belt, I have a penetration value of 121 millimeters. And you know, this is high tier 7.7. So a lot of vehicles still can get penetrated from the front if you know the weak spots. You have the rate of fire and also the stunning mechanics prefer this vehicle. Yes, it now got brought back into line of acceptance with the hull brake mechanic, but overall it's still very, very good. And the actual armor piercing belt, the BR281, was not removed or diluted with HE shells. Still, 4 APHE shells with 121 millimeters of penetration and 22.1 grams of TNT equivalent of high explosive filling. And you have to think about this. There are always 2 shells penetrating the tank. You just kill so many vehicles so easily. So then there is also the BR281U belt, and that one was nerfed. It has 142 millimeters of penetration with the APT round, and you just have 2 in a 4-round belt. Okay, so that was a so-called nerf. The initial penetration is still there. The initial damage is still there. You just can't kill 4 Leopards with 1 clip, just 2. What a pity. Oh my god, it's so nerfed. Not really. It's more of the hull brake that finally kicks in and brings back this vehicle into line. Okay, because before that it was just too good. There is then the discussion if it's balanced amongst high tier and the Leopard spam. Yeah, because there is nothing else but the Leopard that you can play with the Germans, and all other nations are not really that enjoyable, for me at least, at higher tiers. And then we come to probably the best AAA in the game, which is the ZSU 23-4, the Shilka, with a quadruple 23mm HZ P23 mounting with 2000 rounds. Extremely high rate of fire of 850 shots per minute per gun, and the reload rate is 5.2 seconds. But isn't that a continuous belt? I'm not quite sure. Let me know in the comment section. I haven't played this vehicle up until this point too much, but the anti-aircraft purpose or capabilities are there. But it completely fails in the anti-tank role. So that is the Russian tech tree. And especially after that ZSU 37, we need a lot more AAA vehicles with a higher rate of fire, with more guns, more ammunition, more protection, more mobility. This is the kind of message of this video. And it's funny because I think that the Russian tech tree overall has no real downsides, in my opinion, effectively on the battlefield when I played. The medium tanks from the T50 onwards are outstandingly good and annoying for also unexperienced and to a certain degree still experienced players. They just have fantastic guns, fantastic mobility, decent rate of fire. They still can work really nicely. Then the T-34s need no introduction. Then the T-44s are fantastic. And then we still have the T-54s that we have to talk about, or I talked a lot about. So in this respect, the Russians really suffer just in the anti-aircraft role. Certain tank destroyers are also not nice to play, but it's not the entire line that has problems. So I hope you understood the message. Let's have a quick look at the post-battle results. For 6 aircraft destroyed and 3 tanks being knocked out. I got 88,000 silver lines and 8,417 research points on a loss with a 200% RP booster being applied. That was a very long battle, and I think I did my job. The enemy team played very well, very consistent. They were in the game for a very long time. 6,406 score points secured me the first place in my team. So that was quite a rambling on my behalf. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed the background footage. Let me know in the comment section what you think about this Russian AAA problem, and I'm very interested in your opinions. If you like this video, give it a like, subscribe if you want to see more, and we will see each other in the skies and on the battlefields of War Thunder.